Join me, Lawrence Fox, for my new show on GBNEWS. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Next Friday, 7 p.m. on GBNEWS.
A very warm welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast this morning, this Friday, with Rosie and Mark.
Well, let's take a look at the front pages today. The Times says the UK has years of tax pain ahead, despite Mr Hunt promising extra funding for education and for health.
On to The Guardian, which highlights the spending cuts and backdated tax rises, but says that fresh austerity measures being delayed until after the next election in 2 years' time.
Let's look at the Daily Mail, saying middle earners were hammered with a stealth tax squeeze in the Chancellor's autumn statement.
The Eye focusing on the impact of Jeremy Hunt's announcements on households' disposable income, set to fall by 7% over the next 2 years.
Let's look at The Express, which says victory. It celebrates Mr Hunt's pledge to increase pensions at the same rate of inflation as we've just been discussing.
Daily Telegraph quoting the chief executive of the Resolution Foundation, saying that Jeremy Hunt delivered an autumn statement that combined the rhetoric of George Osborne and the policies of Gordon Brown.
The Mirror claims the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his Chancellor were grinning in the House of Commons as they plunged millions into economic hell.
And finally, The Sun, with, yes, a tune of a new Christmas-themed version of the football anthem, Three Lions. Football's coming, ho, ho, home.
I thought you were going to sing it, Mark. Not now.
No, we haven't got the music.
It's bad enough.
Yeah, musicians' union rights. No, we can't do that, can we?
Well, you just heard his voice. Joining us to do the papers this morning is David Mellor, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. A very good morning to both of you. David, why don't we start with you? And of course, we've just gone through what all of the papers are covering on the front pages. The Telegraph's perspective, they're saying the welfare bill is rising. That's particularly
by 90 billion. And I like that quote which they put on the front page, the rhetoric of Osborne, the policies of Brown. Look, someone obviously had to get a grip, but I'm not sure this is the right grip that they have got. Look, they funked doing the thing that they have to do, which is to cut public expenditure. So for 2 years, we're actually going to increase public expenditure, and all those vanity projects, expensive trains to nowhere and so on, are continuing. And what they're doing, of course, is pumping up the 90 billion increase in welfare. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a pensioner. I don't need an added extra money on my old age pension. And I just don't think most pensioners do. The way to deal with impoverished pensioners is to have a specific, and there are specific allowances that increase their money. I just think it's unbelievable that we are having all of this increase in welfare, which people are not really going to consider is appropriate.
The problem is that it's that grey voter that turns up at the polling booth to vote for a party, and this has got to be political as well as economic for the Tory government, and they've got to keep those pensions on side, haven't they?
Yes, that is true, but I think that the real worry has got to be, for instance, if one wants to look at the political consequences. I also chose an article in the Times by one of the more reliable
This is John Curtis.
John Curtis,
yeah.
Yes, whose pages 6 and 7 of the Times, yes. Oh yes, look, I've even turned it over, just show. Party will pay prices.
Because there's lots in there. Yeah.
I was celebrating the increase in the pension too heavily last night, Party will pay price if cost of living is voters' bottom line. And basically what he is saying is that if voters think that the Tories are responsible for this, then they will pay a heavy price at the polling stations, and it's not going to matter if they put up benefits, because it is the cost of living the voters' bottom line. That's what he asked.
And it's not just the pensioners. Liz, you spotted in the Mail the fact it's the strivers. Tories soak the strivers is the handline, and the stealth tax particularly, that people are really going to feel the difference in these next 2 years.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, David's buying the sandwiches at 7 o'clock for us three, because he's the only one who's in pocket.
I'm going to reveal why.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, tell a story.
All right.
People want to know this.
Well, I'm very thrifty, so I always make my own sandwich and bring it in the dark at 3:30.
And
I've been away all week in Kent, more of that later, and I just opened the sandwich. I was being smug. Look, David, I've got my sandwich, and it's covered in green mould.
And my hand was reaching out. I'm going to have a bit, and then whoa!
He no longer wants to share, but as I say, you know, £200 a week for David. That's
he's going to buy you the. What are you going to go for? Pigs and blankets sandwich?
I think if we're in a socialist regime, which we seem to be, those who have should help those who haven't. I know. I was saying on the show a couple of weeks ago, when all the leaks were coming out about this budget, obviously deliberately to test the water of public opinion. What is it going to do to working people if they can see that the economically inactive, and that's a proper term, I'm not using it disparagingly, i.e. the people who are not working because of health reasons, or they can't off work long term, or
retired early.
No, they won't get this. Or they're claiming benefits because they're unemployed, 5 million. And then all the pensioners at the other end of the scale, they're all getting 10-point-something%.
10.1, yeah.
And all the people who are actually getting up, all the lorry drivers that I've overtaken on the M1, within the national speed limit, obviously, this morning in the dark, and all the people in petrol stations who stand there all night, and all the people who are getting up now and going to work, maybe a 12-hour shift, are being hammered. And they're not getting a pay rise. In fact, as we're hearing, they're going to get a 7% decrease in their disposable income. So what kind of social unrest is that going to cause? And also, as it's been pointed out by many experts in the last 24 hours, not least Liam Halligan, I was watching yesterday, it's a disincentive to work because he hasn't come out. It's disingenuous. He hasn't come out and raised income tax levels like up from 20% or up from 40%. It's frozen the threshold,
which is the golden brown line. It's the stealth tax. The golden brown tax.
It's 6%. So I didn't mean to cut across you.
Sorry.
I think it's such a good point. When the higher rate of tax was introduced, it was 6% of the public who paid it. Now it's 14%. So it's insidious that the thresholds are left where they are, and more people are sucked into them. So, I mean, for a government that, if it's ever going to get anywhere, it's got to be honest with the voters. It's been dishonest with the voters. And the other thing we have to worry about, why are there no spending cuts in the first 2 years when there's an election in 2 years?
But can I just
funny coincidence, isn't it?
The point about demotivating people. It's not just the 40% threshold. So if you're going out to work and you're a plumber or something else, you might think, well, I'm not working this afternoon because whatever I earn, I'll only really benefit from half of it. That's at the 40% threshold, 50,000. We're talking later, hopefully, about the NHS, the money that's been given to that, and an article I found about how productivity in the NHS has plummeted. This is partly because consultants will only work a certain number of hours, because after that they're working for half pay.
Yeah,
really.
and they're retiring early because they get hit with a tax charge if they stay too long, and they get a 55% tax charge on their pension.
Yeah, so whether you're a white van man or somebody who's offered extra shifts in a warehouse or somebody who's working in a hospital, there is no incentive to put in extra hours and effort, and we need that for growth. This is just like really pushing down the economy. In fact, I know I'm going to this. How mad does he look? I know you showed the front page before. He's got that mad look in his eyes. He reminded me of an undertaker yesterday, but then I decided he should be known as the Secretary of State for Downward Mobility.
See, where
because he's pushing everybody down. And David's, talking about the pollster, Curtis, and his predictions for how people will vote. Has they forgotten that a lot of people, working people in the northwest where I'm from, lent the Conservatives their vote?
Red wall seats.
If they're going out to work this morning, are they going to be thinking, oh, that's great, I'm going to vote Tory next time? I don't think so.
And a couple of quick things. David Frost, sadly not the late lamented broadcaster, but a good David Frost, a good substitute David Frost.
He's a Brexit negotiator.
He's a Brexit negotiator. He's written a very good commentary on the front page of the Telegraph. And once again, you pull out these statistics and think, how could a Conservative government have got into this mess? Public spending will be at the highest since the 1970s, and taxation the highest since the Second World War. I mean, that is appalling. But the one thing that stuck in my throat a great deal. A lot of Jeremy Hunt's stuff doesn't seem to have been written by anybody with any Conservative inclinations. When Labour got elected in 1970, when Tories got elected in 1979, the top rate of tax was 98%, and that was on so-called unearned income. In other words, you sneered at people and said you were the beneficiaries of unearned income, so you're not going to keep that. What was the phrase that Hunt used? One of the most awful phrases to fall from the lips of a Conservative Chancellor: unearned income, because the Conservatives traditionally have always despised the use of that phrase, because it's not unearned income. If I, for instance, choose to save money, having paid tax on it, in order to benefit my children when I shuffle off this mortal coil, why is that unearned income? I earned it. It's just that I paid tax on it and didn't chuck it all over the place like a drunken sailor. And this disparaging conversations like unearned income show the Conservative Party attacking the middle class. There's no future in that.
Okay.
We've got lots more on the budget to come across the programme. Should we move on to football? This front page of The Sun. Football's coming home. The difficulty with this, and The Sun are making a joke because this new version of the song's come out, lots of people not laughing about the football.
No, I'm surprised at these two because, I thought they were right on virtue signalling lefties, nice people, but I thought
Money
that's...
talks.
But why are they doing this when there's such abuse of human rights in Qatar, which has been more and more widely reported this week? I saw a documentary some time ago about this, which alerted me to it, but there's a story this week, a report this week from India, or somewhere in the Southeast Asian Peninsula, where bodies were being returned home of loved ones. Some guy had sold his bison to send his son to Qatar to work so that he could send money more, and he'd just been sent home in a box without explanation. I don't want anything to do with the World Cup at all, and I don't think it's the subject for... I'm going to sing a bit now because as a broadcaster of many years I know that you can sing a bit because it's called an illustrated chat.
Oh, right.
Okay.
So we are okay on the Musicians Union, right?
I think it's up to 30 seconds. We're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home.
And usefully, page 5 of The Sun, they've actually got the new lyrics in there.
And it's like Christmas.
3 lines on a sleigh, you'll remain still gleaming, a football Christmas song not at all demeaning.
Yeah, it's like Christmas bingo, so I've circled it. In the lyrics, they've got Christmas, they must have made a list. Christmas tree, snowflakes, sleigh, stuffing.
But I mean,
stuffing being what some team's going to get.
We should spend a little bit of time on the more serious side of it.
Or the beer.
Because this is demeaning what's happening. Qatar bought the World Cup, and now they are trying to change the rules, not caring about the arrangements that are made. Look, I don't want to...
I know you've picked up, this is in the mail.
Beer, yes,
Yeah.
This is right, and this is the Mail saying that the beer, where the sponsors pay millions for the privilege of that. I don't feel too sorry for them, but suddenly they're stopping beer being sold in the stadiums, and this is typical of... what is outrageous is we all know that Qatar bought the World Cup. A lot of elderly men on FIFA's committees made money, and I think 17 of them were charged with various offences. what should then have happened is that the World Cup should have been taken away from Qatar. It hasn't been. All these awful abuses of people's rights, where thousands of apparently have died on the building sites. But now we've also got a situation where they're trying to stop people having a beer in the stadium. But yeah, okay, I'm not dying in the last ditch for a glass of beer that I think anyway is so weak you'd have to drink several gallons of it to even feel a little bit under the weather. But you can't have a country like Qatar, which should not be presenting the World Cup, changing the rules.
Surely if you go and you said, okay, I'll buy a ticket, you know there's potential for the rules to change. You can't say, oh, they've got integrity, they're going to stick to what they said.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you can have them change the rules, and I think if you're caught up in that, that's tough luck.
I've been to Qatar over the years quite a lot of times.
Why?
And, well, because business, and also as a minister I had to go. It's one of my responsibilities.
And they've invested very heavily in Britain.
They have invested very heavily in Britain, but the problem is that, you know, when you look at it, it's a pimple on a rock cake, you know, it sort of juts out a little bit. And of course, there are very few Qataris there. There are 3 million people in Qatar, but only 300,000 of them are Qataris. And the reality is they become so rich because they happen to be sitting on a big oil field and gas, particularly gas. And basically, they don't feel they have to obey the rules because they can just pay people to make the rules go away.
Is that an important point, though? The fact that the focus of the world will be on them now, they may realise actually they do have to change because of all the external comment that's made about how things are there.
You would think so, but there's no sign of it yet.
Can I just bring in another point about this beer business? The World Cup is sponsored. One of the major sponsors is Budweiser,
Which has had to move its tent and was going to supply the beer inside the stadium.
and now the FIFA will have to pay millions in compensation to Budweiser because they're sponsoring the event and the people actually in the
And
site.
I don't know how many gallons of Budweiser you've got to drink before you feel even remotely tipsy.
But it's 3%.
But they're still worried about it, you know.
We're not encouraging lots of heavy
Other
drinking
beers
this
are available,
morning.
but maybe not in Qatar. Right, okay. there we
David,
are.
Liz, thank you very much. They'll be back in about 40 minutes' time.